Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Suffolk County Executive Steve Bellone, Assemblyman Charles Levine, Senator Tom Croce, Senator Jeff Klein, and Governor Andrew M. Cuomo.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here. I'm honored to have with us once again here in Suffolk County, here on Long Island, Governor Andrew Cuomo for another critical announcement for our region and our state. I want to introduce and recognize some of the local officials and some of my colleagues here that we work with on a daily basis to deliver good government here on Long Island. We have first and foremost my colleague and friend, our great leader in the Suffolk County Legislature, our presiding officer, Dwayne Gregory. Joining us as well from the town of Brookhaven, our supervisor does a terrific job. Supervisor Ed Romaine is here with us. And some of our partners at the village level of government, my mayor, the village of Babylon, Mayor Ralph Scordino. The mayor of the village of Mastic Beach, Morris Berry. And the deputy mayor of the village of Amityville, Jessica Bernius, is with us. Thank you, Jessica. So once again, I want to thank all of you for being here today, and I'm honored to join with Governor Cuomo to talk about, really, in my mind, one of the most important issues that is facing communities and families across Long Island and across the state of New York. Without a doubt, the New York State Legislature, and I thank all of my colleagues in the state legislature for their work, made real progress this year. But there's one package of bills that really stands out. For too long, zombie properties have been a blight on our communities, bringing down the health and safety of entire neighborhoods and creating a significant tax burden on entire communities and families across our state. Now, under the bold leadership of Governor Cuomo and thanks to the collaboration of our Senate and Assembly members, the state legislature brought forward the most comprehensive legislation in the nation to address the zombie home issue. This legislation will bolster the efforts of the many groups tackling the issue, and I have to say, including the Suffolk County Land Bank, and if I can for a moment just say a big thank you to our team here in Suffolk County that is really leading one of the most, if not the most, robust zombie home renovation and affordable resale program in the state of New York. So thank you, guys. From holding big banks accountable for property maintenance to ensuring that homeowners know their rights throughout the foreclosure process and to limiting the amount of time that an abandoned property can remain vacant, this legislation will help eliminate the degradation of these properties that have imposed on our neighborhoods. And more than that, it'll ensure that zombie homes don't drive down property values for hardworking Long Islanders and New Yorkers, ensure that our neighborhoods remain safe and vibrant places to live and to work and to raise a family. This sweeping legislation is a win-win for all New Yorkers that will improve the quality of life in our communities for generations to come. And I know that by working together, we can continue to accomplish big things for Long Island and for the people of this state. And again, I commend our legislative leaders and, of course, our governor for their great work, and particularly on this issue. And we saw an example of it yesterday as well with the opioid issue, which is so critical to Long Island and to all of us across the state. My great thanks to all of them. And now it is my pleasure to introduce a true friend and champion of all Long Islanders, my good friend, Assemblyman Charles Levine. Chuck?
Thank you, Steve, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here at IBEW 25, smack dab in the heart of Long Island. This union has played a major role in enhancing our quality of life on Long Island for nearly 90 years, and I'm always happy to be in a union house, especially one that has its own bagpipe band. It's also a great day whenever Governor Cuomo comes to town for a great cause. Governor, we know you were last here at IBEW 25 just a few months ago promoting your paid family leave plan, and you know that the working families of Long Island and New York State cannot thank you enough for making that a reality. And we have the governor here 2 days in a row, so this is certainly a big week for Long Island. Each and every New Yorker ought to take great pride in knowing that this has been one of the most productive and significant legislative sessions in modern history. From signing the nation's most comprehensive heroin and opioid legislation to raising the minimum wage and enacting paid family leave, to coming here today to sign this sweeping zombie properties bill into law. This session was a landmark victory for all New Yorkers. This is especially important for Long Island communities because many of us were hit so very hard by the foreclosure crisis, and these blighted properties continue to drag down our property values, and they lessen the quality of life in our neighborhoods. Last year alone, zombie homes cost us approximately $300 million in depreciated property values, and their presence brought blight and undermined what we Americans and we New Yorkers so value, the sense that we are all in this together, and that is just what community is all about. Thankfully, this new legislation will reverse this trend by increasing transparency in the system itself. It will hold financial institutions accountable, and it will ensure that homeowners know their rights in the face of foreclosures. Through the creation of a comprehensive state-monitored list of abandoned properties, we will be able to better track and maintain these properties, and by establishing a consumer bill of rights, we will be able to ensure that New Yorkers can live safely and comfortably in their homes and in our neighborhoods and in our communities for years to come. This expansive new law will help lift up countless communities and families across our state, and I want you to know that I personally take a measure of pride and a great measure of satisfaction in the good progress that my friends and colleagues in the Senate and the Assembly and Governor Cuomo have attained on this critically important issue. Now, my friends and neighbors, it is my great pleasure to welcome someone who has stood up for homeowners and worked tirelessly to see this bill enacted, our friend and colleague, State Senator Jeff Klein.
Thank you very, very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Assembly Member. And I do want to give a shout out to some of my colleagues here today. You know, the way you get things done on a grand scale and an issue as important as zombie properties is in a bipartisan manner. And I want to say a very special thank you to the Majority Leader of the State Senate. He's not here, but let's give a round of applause for Senator John Flanagan, everyone. Senator Tom Croce, who's worked so hard on this issue. He had, unfortunately, the dubious distinction of having so many zombie properties in his district. He listened, he learned, and he was an integral part of passing this legislation. I thank you very much. The Chair of the Education Committee, Senator Carl Masolino, let's give him a hand. Chair of the Labor Committee in the State Senate, Senator Jack Martins. And our newest addition, but certainly a rising star, Senator Mike Venditto. Thank you. You know, after the governor signs this bill today, we are going to see a major victory for communities all over the state. You know, I know something about this because I've worked very hard over the last 3 years to try to get legislation passed dealing with zombie properties. It took 8 investigative studies all over the state, working with all of my colleagues, Democrats and Republicans. And we finally saw that this was an issue that was not only a Suffolk County issue or a New York City issue or my home county in the Bronx. This was truly a statewide issue because this was going to the very heart of who we are, owning a home, the American dream, the most important investment most of us ever make in our entire lives. And we saw property values going down $5,000 per zombie property on a block. The local governments couldn't handle it. I think we heard their cries, and we're doing something about it. And this is something important because after today, now we will have a state registry, which will be under the auspices of the Department of Financial Services. There will be a 1-800 number where people can call in and report a zombie property. But I think most important, once a zombie property is on that registry, that bank will pay $500 a day if they don't maintain those properties. So I think the burden is no longer on the localities. It's no longer on the poor homeowner who's seeing his or her property values plummet. It's where it should be, on the banks. I think we all know that the banks caused the financial meltdown in our nation. And it's, I think, even worse to have innocent homeowners who had nothing to do with the financial crisis suffer at the hands of zombie properties on their blocks. So I want to say a very special thank you again. As I said, I worked 3 long years on this, had tremendous support in the Assembly, but the closer, the real closer, and he's usually a closer on a lot of the great things we do in Albany, is our governor, Governor Cuomo. So let's give Governor Cuomo a tremendous round of applause. I now want to introduce, as I said earlier, I had the pleasure of working with an outstanding colleague who we just did a report together just a couple weeks ago, which outlined how many zombie properties there were in his district in Suffolk County. We priced it at over a $3 million decline in property values, and he said, let's get to work. Let's do something about it. Let's give a big hand and introduce Senator Tom Croce, everyone. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Senator Klein. Governor Cuomo, again, thank you for having us here today. Thank you for coming to Long Island. As a recovering supervisor of the 3rd largest town in our state, I can tell you from day one we were dealing not only with the foreclosure crisis, but what vacant and abandoned unsecured homes meant as far as a health and safety issue to the residents of our town. Most families that moved out here came out here for their little piece of the suburbs from the city. And they maintain their properties to a pristine condition. They take care of their lawns. On Mother's Day, they're out buying their flowers so they can do all the flowers in their gardens. They really take pride in their properties. And through no fault of their own, they would come home every night after a long commute, and they would see a dilapidated structure next to them, infested with raccoons, an absolute magnet for mischief, crime, and drugs. And they were tired of it. Around the time that I was supervisor, Senator Klein was initiating this legislation. And listen, we have an expression in Suffolk County, and Steve Bellone will tell you, we don't care what uniform you're wearing as long as we're marching in the same direction. And that's what we were able to do in Albany. We were able to get something done that really improves the quality of life in our neighborhoods and brings everybody's property values up. Senator Klein, thank you for your leadership on this. To my colleagues in the Senate, thank you for your support on this. To the great town supervisors who are here, Supervisor Romaine, Supervisor Carpenter, to Mayor Sperry, who's dealt with this as well, thank you for your friendship and your support as we push this through for our communities. And most importantly, Governor, thank you for being a man of action on this. It's exactly what we needed out here, and it's so greatly appreciated. Thank you for your leadership. And with that, I get the honor that junior senators don't often get to introduce the governor of our state, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. It is a beautiful afternoon. It's my pleasure to be back on Long Island. As you heard, we were here yesterday announcing some other good work that we're doing, but it's a pleasure to be here today. It's a pleasure to be with your county executive, Steve Bellone, who's doing a great job. Let's give him a round of applause. Senator Tom Croce, who may be a junior senator, but he brings a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom, and he understood this issue inside and out from dealing with it on the local government side, and he was a tremendous force for change. So I applaud him, and let's give him a round of applause. Senator Jeff Klein, we passed the legislation, and it seems like, we just passed the legislation in the past couple of weeks, and then we got it done quickly. Actually, this piece of legislation was worked on for years, and Senator Klein literally has been working on this piece of legislation for 7, 8 years, so it's been a long time coming, and he really tilled the ground, and he informed New Yorkers about the facts. So let's give him a round of applause for his good work. And to my other colleagues from Albany, the senators who are here, it's a pleasure to see them. They are looking much healthier than the last time I saw them. We finished the legislative session last week. The legislative session goes from January to June, basically. And when you get down towards June, the session starts to grind on just a little bit. And people get tired of driving back and forth, and they miss home. So they tend to get a little irritable down towards the end of session. But now that they're home and they're rested, they're looking much better. Assemblyman Charles Levine, let's thank him for his leadership and all the Assembly colleagues. And as you heard, we did have a very productive legislative session. And that's what it's about at the end of the day. If you're a member of the legislature, you're away from your family, you're up in Albany. It's a very disjointed lifestyle for half of the year. It's hard, it's tough, especially nowadays. It's not easy to be in public service. And what makes it all worthwhile is your feeling and belief that you're actually getting things done for people, that you're making a difference. Because without that, none of it makes sense. The sacrifice doesn't make sense, the aggravation doesn't make sense, the effort doesn't make sense. And this year, when we came home, we knew that we got good things done for people. Not just good things in this state, but literally we set national precedents this year. The heroin bill that we signed yesterday is a comprehensive package to combat heroin and opioids. It's so good that the White House has said to us they want to use our program as a model for the other states to follow. And that is literally going to save lives. We passed a paid family leave program that is the best in the United States. We're the first state to mandate that every school test for lead in the water, which is long overdue. We funded education to the highest level in history. $25.8 billion will go to local governments to fund education, because that's where our priority is. We raised the minimum wage, and we cut taxes for the middle class to the lowest rate in 70 years, believe it or not. I love that last fact because that's how I subsidize my income. I bet people all across this state, do you think New York State raised your taxes or lowered your taxes? They always say raise taxes because you can't even conceive of government lowering taxes. But we actually lowered the middle class tax rate to the lowest rate in 70 years. So give them a round of applause because they did a really great job. And part of what we accomplished was this bill, the so-called zombie properties bill. These are abandoned properties that have been abandoned for many, many years, and as you have heard, have been a blight on neighborhoods. This started, actually, from the fiscal crisis, the mortgage meltdown in 2007, 2008, which was a scam by the banks and Wall Street on the people of this country, where they literally entered into a scam where they believed real estate was always going to continue to appreciate, and therefore they could process mortgages for every American. They put people in houses they couldn't afford. They gave people mortgages that they couldn't afford. Wall Street made a lot of money, and the scam worked, the Ponzi scheme worked until it didn't work. And when it didn't work, then everything collapsed. And then there were foreclosures, and people lost their homes, and we had to write down mortgages, and the government had to step in and actually bail out the banks. It was a great injustice. The American taxpayer paid the bill, and it was truly a financial fraud and a house of cards. This is the aftermath of that. Many of these properties were properties that got caught up in that mortgage meltdown. And then you had to get each property and each mortgage and track it down and pull it out of the pools and bundles that they had put together and go through a foreclosure proceeding. The banks often don't want to go through foreclosure. Why? Because if they go through foreclosure, then they own the house. If they own the house, they have to mark down the mortgage, which costs them money, and they then had to maintain the house. So many banks just didn't want to go through the foreclosures, and they left the properties there. And the properties decayed and decayed and decayed and deteriorated, and they were an anchor on the neighborhood, and they literally sucked down the surrounding homes with them. So Senator Croce is exactly right. Home ownership, which is the American dream, Suffolk, you moved out to the island, you had your home, you had your piece of land, and now an abandoned home on the block was actually costing you money because it was bringing down your property value. And you're maintaining it, and you're paying your taxes, and this is your equity and your future and your retirement, and the abandoned home is still continuing to detract from your value. Local governments couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't get title to the home. Even if they could get title to the home, where would they get the money to take care of the home and purchase the home? And this went on year after year after year. Community development groups, housing groups were frustrated, neighbors were frustrated, police department was frustrated, and there was no end in sight. This bill answers that problem. This bill first has a Bill of Rights for the owners of the homes, because the first thing we would like to do is keep the owner in the home and adjust the mortgage so the owner can actually afford those mortgage payments. This bill sets up a settlement conference, which is an expedited resolution between the bank and the owner to try to come to terms. If the bank can't come to terms with the owner, then what this bill says is once the house is vacant, the bank is responsible for the maintenance. Once the house is vacant, not once it's foreclosed. Once it's vacant, now the bank has to step in and has to maintain that house as a good neighbor would maintain that house. If they don't, as you heard from Senator Klein, $500 penalty per day, which is steep. And if they don't, the local government can come in and take over that house, or the state can come in and take over that house. If the bank does foreclose on that house, they have to sell it within 90 days. So the problem of abandoned homes, banks not taking responsibility, that is over. They are responsible for that home. They're responsible for the maintenance of that home. That home will no longer be a drag on the surrounding neighborhood. That scam, that financial fraud that cost this nation so much, the cost stops here. To the extent they're called zombie properties, I think they're called zombies because the nightmare of the mortgage meltdown continues. And that's what those abandoned buildings really are. They're the continuing nightmare of the financial meltdown. Well, the nightmare is over in New York as soon as we sign that bill. I want to congratulate my colleagues who, again, worked so hard, Senator Croce, and no place better than New York and no place better than Suffolk. New York State, by some estimates, has the largest problem in the nation of these abandoned homes, and Suffolk County has the largest problem in the state of New York with over 760 abandoned homes. So this is ground zero of the zombie home issue, and this is where we're going to sign the bill. Thank you, and God bless you.
Flash your block and the video camera back there.
The bill is signed. Congratulations.